another deep dive. Let's talk solar energy.
Sounds good.
Specifically, are those massive solar farms really better for the planet than rooftop panels? We've got some research straight from the International Journal of Life Cycle Assessment,
Oh, wow.
and let me tell you, it's eye-opening. Get ready to compare rooftop solar with utility-scale solar farms,
Oh,
and maybe even rethink some assumptions about going green.
interesting.
So what's fascinating about this study is it really zeroes in on a detail we might not always consider,
Mhm.
the racking and mounting systems.
Yeah, that's where the biggest difference lies between your rooftop setup and those sprawling solar farms.
So why are racking and mounting systems so crucial to the environmental impact?
Well, picture this. You've got your compact residential system, usually around 7.4 kilowatts peak, perched neatly on a roof.
Right.
Then you've got these utility scale behemoths generating a massive 3.5 megawatts peak.
Okay.
The materials, the installation, even the land they use, all of that adds up differently.
Okay, I'm starting to see the bigger picture here. Let's dive into the findings. Where do these two types of solar installations stack up?
Let's start with embodied energy.
Okay.
The energy it takes to actually manufacture and install the system. Surprisingly, rooftop solar uses significantly less energy per kilowatt of power produced.
Yeah.
We're talking a reduction of 21 to 54% compared to the ground-mounted systems.
So even though larger systems seem more efficient at converting sunlight, the upfront energy cost is higher.
Yeah, it is.
That's kind of counterintuitive.
It is. Think of it like this. Would you fire up a massive industrial oven to bake a single cupcake?
Probably not.
Rooftop solar is kind of like baking those cupcakes at home. You're using less energy for a smaller output,
Right.
but it's surprisingly efficient in the long run.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah,
Makes a lot of sense. What about the carbon footprint? Do those numbers follow a similar trend?
they do. Rooftop solar again takes the lead, emitting 18 to 59% less CO2 equivalent per kilowatt than those utility scale farms.
Wow, that's a significant difference,
It-
especially for those of us trying to make eco-conscious choices.
Absolutely, if reducing your carbon footprint is a priority.
Right.
This research makes a strong case for rooftop solar.
Interesting.
Now, water usage is another factor. Here, the gap is less dramatic,
Okay.
but rooftop still edges out utility scale using slightly less water overall.
Why is that? I'd imagine those massive solar farms need a lot of water for cleaning and cooling.
That's a common misconception.
Oh.
Most of the water footprint for solar comes from manufacturing the panels themselves,
Gosh.
which is pretty consistent, whether you're talking rooftop or utility scale. The operational water usage is actually relatively low for both.
Interesting. So the choice between rooftop and utility scale doesn't significantly impact the water footprint of the solar panels themselves.
Right.
But wait, didn't the researchers take this analysis a step further?
They did.
I read something about comparing different types of solar panels and even different locations.
Yeah, they wanted to see if their findings held true under a variety of conditions. That's where things get even more fascinating.
Okay, I'm all ears. What did they discover when they started changing the variables?
First, they looked at the impact of different photovoltaic module types.
Okay.
Because rooftop systems often use smaller, lighter modules than utility-scale farms. And guess what? Even with that variation, rooftop solar still consistently had a lower environmental impact across all categories.
So the type of panel didn't really tip the scales one way or the other?
Exactly. Then they took it a step further and compared the environmental impact using the specific types of panels you'd find in each application.
Okay.
Smaller, more lightweight modules for rooftops and larger, more powerful ones for utility-scale systems.
Okay, so now we're comparing apples to apples, using the modules actually designed for each system. What happened then?
That's where it gets really interesting. While rooftop solar still maintained its lower environmental impact, the difference between the two systems became even more pronounced.
So using the appropriate modules for each system actually made rooftop solar look even better.
Exactly. It turns out those smaller, lighter modules used on rooftops are inherently more energy efficient to produce.
Interesting.
They might not be as powerful individually, but their manufacturing process just uses less energy overall.
So even though larger modules are more efficient at converting sunlight into electricity,
Right?
the manufacturing process for those smaller modules gives rooftop solar a significant advantage.
Fascinating. It really highlights how important it is to consider the entire life cycle of a product, not just its final performance.
It's like thinking about the fuel efficiency of a car.
Yeah.
You might have a powerful sports car that gets great mileage on the highway,
Right.
but if it takes tons of energy to manufacture and transport, that initial impact can outweigh the benefits.
Okay, so we've covered the different types of solar panels. What other factors did the researchers consider?
They also looked at the environmental impact of different ground-mounting designs.
Okay.
Utility-scale solar farms are often built using concrete foundations.
Which, as you can imagine, have a pretty significant environmental footprint.
Makes sense. Concrete production is known for its high emissions. Did the researchers look at any alternative foundation types?
They did. They compared the traditional concrete foundations to a less material-intensive option called driven pile foundations.
Okay.
Instead of pouring those large concrete slabs, imagine driving long, slender piles deep into the ground to
Yeah.
support the solar panels. This approach significantly reduces the amount of concrete needed, lowering the environmental impact.
I see. So driven pile foundations are essentially a more sustainable way to build those large solar farms.
Yeah.
Did that shift the results in favor of utility-scale solar?
It did improve the environmental profile of utility-scale systems,
Oh.
but even with those driven pile foundations, the environmental impact still didn't match that of rooftop solar.
Wow. So even with a more eco-friendly foundation design, rooftop solar still reigns supreme.
That's right. It really speaks to the inherent advantages of those smaller, more distributed systems. Remember, we're not just talking about the panels themselves, but also the transportation, the installation, and even the land use. All of those factors contribute to the overall environmental footprint.
Okay, so we've covered different panel types and mounting systems. What else did the researchers investigate?
They took their analysis on the road, literally, and
Yeah.
examined how location impacted the results. They compared the environmental performance of rooftop and utility-scale solar in 4 different states: Arizona, California, Florida, and Michigan.
Wow.
They specifically chose those states to see if the amount of sunshine,
Right.
which varies quite a bit across the U.S.,
Yeah,
would influence the outcomes.
that makes sense.
Right.
Would you expect places with more sunshine, like Arizona, to have a faster energy payback time for their solar systems?
You would, and that's what they found. But here's the interesting part.
Okay.
Regardless of location, rooftop solar consistently had the lowest energy payback time,
Hmm.
meaning it generated enough energy to offset its manufacturing and installation costs faster than utility-scale systems.
So no matter where you are in the U.S., rooftop solar seems to have the environmental edge.
Exactly. And that's a powerful takeaway for policymakers and individuals alike. It means that promoting rooftop solar can have a significant positive impact on our environmental goals, regardless of geographical variations in sunlight.
Okay, so we've analyzed different module types, mounting systems, and locations.
Mm.
Is there anything else we need to consider when comparing rooftop and utility-scale solar?
There's one final, often overlooked aspect to factor in the lifespan of the system. Solar panels don't last forever,
Right.
and every replacement cycle carries its own environmental cost.
That's a great point. I hadn't thought about the impact of replacement. So do rooftop and utility-scale systems have different lifespans?
They typically do. Rooftop systems tend to have slightly shorter lifespans
Okay.
than their utility scale counterparts. They're more exposed to the elements might experience shading from trees or nearby buildings,
Right.
and sometimes receive less rigorous maintenance.
Okay, so if they need to be replaced more often,
Mhm.
wouldn't that give utility-scale systems an advantage?
It might seem that way at first glance,
Yeah.
but remember, even though rooftop systems may need replacement sooner, the environmental impact of each replacement cycle is significantly lower
Okay.
because we're dealing with smaller systems and fewer materials.
Like our cupcake analogy again.
Exactly.
Baking a few batches of cupcakes over time might use less energy overall than constantly firing up that massive industrial oven,
Right,
even if each batch doesn't last as long.
precisely. It's all about weighing those trade-offs and looking at the long-term impact.
This has been an incredible deep dive. We've really analyzed the environmental pros and cons of rooftop versus utility-scale solar from every angle. It's clear that this study makes a strong case for rooftop solar's environmental benefits.
It certainly does. But this research also raises some intriguing questions that go beyond the purely environmental aspects.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Hmm.
What are some of those questions that we need to explore further?
We've seen that rooftop solar consistently outperforms utility scale in terms of environmental impact. But it's not exactly taking the world by storm.
Yeah. Why is that? What's stopping more people from going solar?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? There are several factors at play here.
Okay.
Cost is often cited as the biggest barrier. While solar has become more affordable in recent years,
Right.
that initial investment can still be a hurdle for many homeowners.
Right. Not everyone has the upfront cash to shell out for solar panels, even if it means saving money in the long run. Are there any other roadblocks?
Definitely.
Hmm.
Not every home is ideally suited for solar.
Okay.
Roof space, the direction your roof faces, even shading from trees, can impact a system's efficiency. Then there's the perceived complexity of the technology itself.
Right.
Some people are hesitant to dive into something they don't fully understand
Yeah.
or are worried about maintenance down the road.
It sounds like a combination of practical concerns, financial considerations, and maybe even a bit of a knowledge gap. What can we do to overcome these challenges and unlock the potential of rooftop solar?
This is where policy and incentives come into play. Strong policies that support rooftop solar, like tax credits, rebates, and streamlined permitting processes, can help make it more accessible and appealing to homeowners.
It's like giving people a nudge in the right direction,
Right.
making it easier and more affordable to make those sustainable choices.
Exactly. And beyond financial incentives, we need to raise awareness and educate people about the benefits of rooftop solar.
Right.
Demystifying the technology, addressing concerns, and showcasing success stories can go a long way in increasing adoption rates.
So it sounds like a multifaceted approach is needed. We need to tackle the cost barrier, simplify the process, and educate the public about the advantages of rooftop solar. If we can make it easier and more appealing for people to choose rooftop, imagine the impact we could have.
Absolutely. More homes powered by clean energy, lower carbon emissions, a more resilient energy grid. It's a win-win for everyone.
This deep dive has been a revelation. We've debunked the myth that bigger is always better when it comes to solar, and we've explored the complexities of bringing rooftop solar to the forefront.
And remember, the research we discussed today is just one piece of the puzzle.
Right.
There's still so much to explore and discover in the world of sustainable energy.
Absolutely. For those who want to delve deeper, you'll find a link to the full study in our show notes. And as always, keep those questions coming and keep diving deep.
Until next time.